Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashim Kumar. Tonight we examine British concerns that Ireland's visa regime and common travel area may be exploited by Russian intelligence against a backdrop of Cold War echoes, embassy intrigue, historic KGB operations and modern geopolitical stakes tied to tech hubs, military transit and Europe's evolving security landscape. Joining us to lay this out for us is Pyotr Kurzin. He's a director at the Global Gambit. Mr. Kurzin, welcome to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Nice to be with you.
So, I mean, when I did the research into our conversation, it sounded a bit like a James Bond novel. You know, the Russians have had a foothold, if you like, in Ireland since the 1970s, when they were running guns to the Provisional IRA, at which time, of course, their embassy was also used for espionage purposes. What has changed?
Well, the Irish are a country that have always had a rather unique place in Europe, I think, from a security standpoint. They've always declared this neutrality. And they have quite a left-leaning, I think, underlying political current. There's a lot of emphasis on, obviously, the Palestinians and Gaza. And therefore, I think that this is somewhere where the remnants of Soviet or communist or socialist policies exist. And whilst Putin doesn't necessarily hold those same sentiments, I think it means that Russia, the Kremlin, can see Ireland as a Achilles heel to the more securitized aspect of the UK. But what's also changed is, of course, that the UK is more dysfunctional. It's more disunited ever since the past 15 years or 10 years since Brexit, especially. And, of course, everything else with NATO. The UK is uniquely positioned in its geographical location with what's known as the GI-UK gap, or that's the Greenland-Icelandic-UK relationship. And this is an incredibly important cornerstone of NATO's deterrence and broader strategic thinking, and also for the Russians, therefore. We've seen build-ups around the UK more broadly, including Irish waters, which perhaps with these revelations now is part of the reason they've been able to do it, which is simply that they've had maritime vessels in and around the British Isles and Ireland, just sort of looking at the undersea cables, looking around and sort of, should we say, scanning, not necessarily going to do anything yet, but it's, and this is therefore very important for the Russians' ability to gain access to the Atlantic and disrupt, interfere in Western interests, as we've seen with Romania and other areas in the past few months.
Understood, but I'd like to focus on Ireland. And I mean, Ireland has issued 14,000 visas to Russian citizens with a 90% approval rate on applications. Now, I hear what you're saying about security being more relaxed in Ireland, but then why doesn't the UK simply not accept people coming over, Russian citizens coming over from Ireland? I mean, the UK is in charge of its own immigration, isn't it, apparently?
Well, indeed it is. Unfortunately, there's a big consideration with that, which is that the nickname for London is Londongrad. Being half Russian myself, I can tell you from a personal experience the importance of foreign money or Russian money into the country. Now, my father has nothing to do with that angle, obviously, but I think it's more the point that the British government, or should we say what the British government says and sometimes what the policies do are going to be different. And whilst there has been a clampdown on oligarchs like Roman Abramovich and other sort of questionable individuals with financial flows into Britain, the UK still benefits a lot from Russian dissidents or Russian individuals. Now, it's a problem, basically, that the West more broadly is going to claim strong statements about doing things, but when push comes to shove over certain things, or I don't know, maybe it's just a simple case of bribery, who knows, it might not always follow through. And I mean, we could see this in France, we could see this in Italy. There are quite a few other European countries that have granted Russian visas or visas to Russians over the past 4 or 5 years of this war. So Ireland is particularly noteworthy for its relationship to Britain, but it's not alone. in to offer these visas. What's concerning is what I said before, that there is an inconsistency between the rhetoric of the British government, which in of itself is completely in disarray with the infighting and potential leadership over Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. And so the Russian people, or whoever it may be, I think it would be misplaced to say that all these Russians seeking tourists are sort of a questionable or malicious intent. But certainly the British government don't look at every single individual coming from Ireland via Ireland from Russia and think that they're a nefarious individual. It's a complicated thing, and there's going to be loops, and this is part of the problem. The Russians are good at manipulating these systems. They're good at the grey zone conflicts. They're good at manipulating political, asymmetric, whatever term you like to use in these regards, and then filtering it back into other ways such as kinetic warfare, cybernetics, and so on. So it doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, but the bigger question is, how do we clamp down on it and do a better job of filtering through and finding out who these people are, what their interests and intentions are, and whether or not they're an okay pled into the country.
Indeed. So it seems like a bit of a leaking sieve, doesn't it? Whether it's Russian citizens coming from Ireland or whether they're going directly to the UK. You say that the UK is so disjointed at the moment in its immigration policy that it can't even control the people, the Russian citizens coming directly into the country. What should be done?
Well, I think there needs to be a greater unification between different European nations over migration. This is where I think Giorgia Meloni has been pretty effective. She pushes for a harder line approach to illegal maritime arrivals, or should we say irregular migrants more broadly. The use of the border patrol, Frontex, I think it's called, of the European Union is incredibly important. And we've seen these sorts of narratives beginning to adjust, including in the UK, which is hardening or tightening sort of things like the European human rights. I forget the official name for it, but the point is that there needs to be a greater, I think, clamping down of sort of irregular migrants, those who overstay, those who are undocumented, and that includes those who come with questionable relations to individuals, not just granting people access because they have a lot of money. That includes in the case of Moscow. That being said, I also think that it is within the interest of the European Union to not completely disregard the Russians. There are plenty of individuals who can offer something, and doing a greater job of trying to offer political asylum to those who can actually give greater insights and information about what's going on in the Kremlin could be of asset. So I think there needs to be a lot more targeted refinement in the immigration system, not just in the UK, but across the European Union, and being tougher and saying no, but also being more willing to recognise those who can provide value and therefore saying yes.
Understood. Now, in the last few seconds that we have left, Mr. Kurzin, I mean, Ireland should be very concerned about the number of large tech companies, for example, that are headquartered there, who take advantage of the tax opportunities available to them. Surely they should be more aware of the risk to leakage of secrets from those companies to Russia and other countries which are unfriendly.
Well, of course they should. But that's not how they're going to operate. I think a lot of people in positions of influence in Ireland will know very much the benefits of bringing in these MNCs, these conglomerates, these tech companies, because they bring in so much money. But what it leads to is a huge imbalance economically. The GDP of Ireland may be very high, but so are the costs of certain things. And it's essentially a sort of glorified tax haven in some ways, but
Indeed.
Therefore that attracts
Indeed.
people with questionable intent.
Right. Unfortunately, Mr. Kurzin, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. I'm very sorry to cut you off.
But please try to give me more time for the final question.
Yes, I wish we had had more time. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.